So, Kyle and Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the Parenting Aces podcast. Let's talk some high school tennis.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I appreciate you having us on the show, Lisa. We go way back, and this is a passion of Tom and I. And it's a great opportunity for us to talk about high school tennis. I'm currently the head coach of Marvin Ridge High School, which is just a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. And we have a great sports program overall. In fact, we won the Max Preps award. That's like a point system that they have for all of sports for all of North Carolina. And we were basically the winner for 3A last year. We got bumped up to 4A, so I guess that was our reward. But just a little bit about our tennis program. It really starts for us in middle school. And we have a lot of kids that come out. I think last year we had about 36 boys that tried out for the middle school team. I will say our school, we do have a cut culture, and that's sometimes a sticking point among coaches. And I actually coach the middle school team, and one of the things that I try to do is keep as many kids as possible. Now we share the courts across 4 teams, boys team, girls team, and then the high school boys and girls. So it can get a little bit challenging scheduling court time. And once you get into that season, you start having matches. It's really hard to get practices. So we try to find courts elsewhere. But everything kind of starts with that feeder program in middle school, and we have great participation and a lot of kids that come in middle school that are highly trained. So it's our job as coaches to get them more accustomed to a team environment and how we can get them accustomed to playing doubles together, and really just managing things more from a team perspective and working on a lot of tactical awareness and things like that. But here in North Carolina, we play 6 lines of singles, 3 lines of doubles. Each line is a point, so it's very similar to like D3 tennis. And the high school program, we obviously have a good feed in from the middle school. So we have a lot of talented players that come up through that program. We're a little bit more limited in terms of some of the rules that we have to comply to. And we typically have about a roster of around 12 kids, and that makes the practices run a little bit smoother. We have some compliance, and Tom could probably talk more about this because he's been through it a lot longer than I have, in terms of kids have to play a certain number of matches to be valid for the postseason. Mm-hmm. So we have to be aware of that. So it'd be very hard to have a really high number of kids, but probably 12 to 14 kids is the sweet spot that we try to keep. And then we run, in my opinion, we run a pretty professional program. We run our practices very similar to a college team and how they would run their practices. We're very good about incorporating, a lot of footwork patterns, a lot of footwork drills. And then we always have some specific drill that's like the theme of the day. And then when we run our practices, we'll try to incorporate, whatever drill that we went through. And for me personally, I do a lot of 2-on-1 drills because we want to make sure that the kids are getting in, double skills and double strategy during the practice sessions. But typically we'll have one practice each week that's very much focused exclusively on doubles. And I'll let Tom jump in here and just talk about kind of, historically what our culture has been like for the Marvin Ridge team.
Well, let me just ask you really quickly before, Tom, I'm going to bring you on too. But Kyle, we see a lot of high school tennis programs where the tennis team coach isn't a tennis coach per se, or isn't somebody that has experience with the sport of tennis. What is your background, and what what is the reason you got involved with coaching the high school team?
Yeah, I have an interesting background. So I grew up played golf on the high school team. After we had kids, it was challenging to get out on the golf course and spend 5 hours out on the golf course. So my wife bought me a tennis lesson, and about 20
Smart
minutes,
woman.
yeah, about 20 minutes into the lesson, I literally had to call a timeout, and I told the coach, I've been sitting on the couch for a while. I'm not in shape. This is not really doing either of us any good. He was just kind of running me side to side. There was really not a lot of instruction. It was more like a cardio tennis workout. So from that point forward, I really, became passionate about learning the technical side of tennis, and probably, have about 400 hours of technical research on the game. And lo and behold, when my son enters sixth grade, he comes to me and says that he wants to play tennis for the school. And I told him, I said, this is Marvin Ridge. These are very competitive teams, and you played a little bit of red ball. He basically didn't play orange ball or green dot ball. So I didn't have a ton of encouragement, but we went out literally twice a day. His bus came in the morning. We're out at the bus stop, literally hitting volleys, waiting on the bus in the mornings. And then he would come home, and then we would, practice until dark every day for about 2 months. And he barely made the team. And he really, from that point forward, but because if it's a team environment, a team culture, he really embraced that a lot. And I started coaching the middle school team. It's a volunteer gig, and really just started coaching in that realm, and just kind of stayed ahead of him in terms of my technical skill development. And ended up, started coaching more on the side, and still do that today. And then as my son aged out of middle school and got into high school, Tom's son was a senior when my son was a freshman. And I think we played 3 matches. The season was going great, and then everything was shut down because of COVID. So we all know that day,
Yeah.
very well, that happened, that all of sports got shut down across. So the following year, when Thompson graduated, I took over the team. My son was a sophomore at the time, which was last year, and now he's a junior. So my background is a little bit unique. The interesting thing about my background, though, from a coaching perspective, is, all of my research and development has been on kind of the modern game, right? And I think that's probably different for most coaches. I think most coaches learn the more kind of classical game. And I think the last guest you had was talking about the stretch shortening cycle, which is not a term that we use with players, but it's certainly, the types of techniques that a lot of our players use, because they have learned more in kind of the modern era versus the classical era, and being able to use the modern technology that we have with strings and rackets. So I've really done all my research on more of just how current D1 players play, and I think that's reflective in terms of how we coach the team. It's more based on modern footwork, modern strokes. We're certainly not going to change anyone if they come with more classical strokes, because a lot of our practices are very target-based, target-oriented. So if they're able to go out and prove to us that they can deal with different situations, different scenarios, and hit to targets, then we're going to embrace whatever technique they have.
Love it. Tom Traub, you are the assistant now, but you were the head coach for how long?
For 3 years.
Okay.
And then before that, I was a middle school coach before that for about 4 years.
So Kyle's just kind of following you through the education process here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I guess it's my quick background. I was kind of self-taught player. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, where there weren't many tennis players. People were mainly, football, basketball. I grew up playing basketball and lacrosse, and I saw tennis when I was in high school on television, and I started playing. And I ended up playing college tennis as a walk-on, Division II. And then after college, I moved to New York City, and it was very difficult to play in New York. I had a very busy job, so I didn't play for many years. And then in my 40s, I started playing again, and I did what a lot of people did. I went to the internet. I looked at all the online coaches, Jeff Salzenstein, Ian Westerman, Fuzzy Yellow Balls, right, all that stuff. And I learned. I actually got better than I was when I was in college. And then when I turned about 50, people say, "Hey, Tom, you should try some tournaments." So I went out and played the North Carolina Adult Senior Championship. And the first time I showed up, I was 52. I reached the finals. So I was shocked. Like, I didn't really, maybe people weren't turning out that year. I don't know. But and then people said, "Well, Tom, you should go to the nationals." So then I turned 55. I went to the 55 and over men's clay court nationals in Savannah, Georgia, and that was a great experience. I didn't reach the finals there, I have to tell you. So that was kind of my tennis journey, and then my two sons. I'm a big believer in team sports, so I had my sons playing baseball, recreational basketball, and I've been a coach really since they were probably about 5 years old. And then didn't get them into tennis until they were about 12. And then we went through the whole journey of that. I've been the whole tennis parent, and I coached both of them, and very technique focused, kind of like Kyle. I'm very kind of technique oriented. And, in the Southeast, anyone who's been a parent in the Southeast, we went through the qualifiers for the regional. We went to Southerns, been to Rome, Georgia too many times that I care. Little Rock, Arkansas for the 16 Southerns. And so been through all that, as a parent, and kind of prepared me well, I guess, for being a high school coach.
Well, I mean, Marvin Ridge has to be unique in the area in that it's got two coaches who know tennis and play tennis and understand tennis. Those kids, I hope they realize how lucky they are to have you guys. As I've shared before on this podcast, and I shared with Kyle when we were talking offline, my son's high school coach was the football conditioning coach at the high school and really knew next to nothing about tennis. He enjoyed tennis, and the guys had fun practicing with him, but he was by no means a tennis coach. So your kids are very lucky to have you. So, Tom, give us a little bit of the philosophy behind the program at Marvin Ridge, maybe even starting with the middle school kids. What are you trying to impart to these kids as they join the team?
Sure. So middle school, I treated that a lot different than the high school. So middle school, because you got developing players. Some of them are really trying to develop that passion for the game, trying to keep it lighter. So we make sure every practice we end with some games. King of the court. One of the things I would do as a coach is I would have little, like, say, $5 Chick-fil-A gift card, and we would have a contest. And kids love contests. I'm going to win the contest. So always try to do that to keep it fun. And the thing I told all the middle school players is I said, the player that's going to be the best player, then when you get to high school, is going to be the player that really is willing to change, to try to continuously improve and make small changes and try them out over time. I said, and that's what you all need to do. So I would encourage just experimentation, with, hey, try a slice backhand. If that doesn't work, you try coming over the ball. So I was really trying to focus on just the mindset of continuous improvement. It was, all of us as tennis players, you'd like to think that, if I just learn this one trick, right, all of a sudden I'm going to go out and be great.
Yeah.
But then the next time after I maybe I got a lesson, I can't replicate it. It doesn't, we all know it doesn't really happen like that. And it just takes, if you stay with it, and eventually you'll develop, that skill. So I was trying to instill that in the players.
Right. And so in terms of why somebody should sign their child up or encourage their child to sign up or try out for a middle school team or a high school team. I mean, Tom, your kids played the USTA junior circuit thing. How did you convince them that playing for their school was an important piece in their junior tennis journey?
Well, when I was the coach, no, no, but
I mean, I get that, but not everybody can be the coach of their kids' team. So,
right. No, I would say that for my kids, they were starting late. A lot of players start 6, 7, 8 years old. They developmentally were still developing. So for them, they really wanted to play on the team. We actually have to, as Kyle mentioned, we do have to actually cut players from the middle school team. I believe we would have about 25 players try out for maybe 12 spots. So in fact, they actually had to, make sure that they could make the team. Right. So I think we're fortunate just to have that kind of turnout and that kind of interest from the parents. We kind of have a reputation of that kind of culture. So so for my kids, it was no question. I think there is a question for those top level players that are shooting for D1, and I think that's where we have had a few players who decided not to play, decided to go to the tournament circuit.
Mm-hmm. And how do you kind of sell those kids on coming and playing for their school? Because again, I've talked about this in the past, but my son played for his high school team his freshman year, and they got to playoffs and came up just short at playoffs to win the state championship. And after freshman year, he told the coach, I'm not coming back next year. I'm not coming back junior year. But if by senior year I've committed to college, I'll come back and play for you senior year. And that was kind of the deal he made with the high school coach. And the coach was okay with that. We were okay with that. And as it turned out, he had committed to college early his senior year. So he played, our high school season was in the spring. So he played his senior year and they won states. And it was, a great end to his high school tennis. But there are a lot of kids in his position, and it sounds like you guys are facing the same thing, that they feel like high school tennis is maybe a waste of time for them. It's not going to help them reach their goal of getting recruited at a high enough level college. What do you say to those kids?
Yeah, I'm going to let Kyle talk this one. Kyle, I know we actually recently had a few of these cases, and I know, Kyle, why don't you handle that?
Well, I think first and foremost, you really have to run a professional program because those kids they're used to a professional program, right? So you don't want to have any regression if they were to get on the team. But I think there's some other things that ultimately, if those kids are very serious and they're trying to play the upper levels of college tennis, then they want to play on a team, right? I mean, college tennis is a team sport. Mm-hmm. And let's be fair, it's pretty lonely out there when you're playing, the tournament scene. You're traveling by yourself typically. You're with your family at most. And that's about it. So I think that there's a lot of life lessons that can be learned playing on a team. And in particular, our team, I think the two things that we really provide is, we hope that everyone is going to be better when they come out of the program from when they started, right? So we feel like that, if we're running our professional program and we've got a base of kids that can basically hit with anybody, that's the one challenge that I think other programs would have that we don't have, is that they might have, some lower skilled players, and then they have one superstar, and who's the superstar going to hit with. I still think there are ways that you can work around that and challenge that superstar to make it valuable for him to show up for practice. But we're pretty lucky. We have a lot of kids that are deep in the talent pool. So I think as long as we can run the professional program, we can promote this as a team sport, and the fact that hopefully we'll have an opportunity that we can vie for a state level championship. And that's an experience that they will take with them, for a lifetime. So, there's definitely challenges. And I think the one thing, let's be fair, we're probably up against is their academy coaches don't really promote high school tennis. Largely because that's money out of their pocket. And, for a lot of programs, they would assume that there could be some regression because they're not running a professional program. So that's really the challenge, is that, you've got to run your practices to the level that those high level players can get value out of it. And you've got to have other players that they can hit with, that they feel like they're going to be challenged. So
let me just interrupt 1 second.
Sure.
Beyond the academy coaches, it goes to the college coaches too, because for the longest time, we heard college coaches say, oh, I don't care if a kid played high school tennis. And in fact, that's probably a negative on their record if they played high school tennis. I think in recent years, we've started to hear a different message from the college coaches. They've started understanding the value of these kids having that team experience prior to starting college. So I think there was this mindset that high school tennis is, it's not very good. It's a waste of time. You're not going to get any better. You're better off being at your drills every day at your academy. You're better off playing tournaments on the weekends. And I think, Kyle, you and I were talking about this offline. There are a lot of high school athletic associations that don't allow the high school team players to compete outside of their school. So for tennis players, that means during season, they're not allowed to play tournaments or, play other events. They can only play for their school team during season. So that's a big challenge as well. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how these rules continue to evolve. But I know, one player in the space that's really starting to make some noise and make a difference is Universal Tennis. And I'm curious what you guys have seen in terms of Universal Tennis starting to accept high school tennis match results to form a player's rating, and really starting to engage with the high school programs a lot more.
Yeah, I think last year was the first season. As coaches, we enter our scores into a platform called Max Preps, and that's across all sports. So if you go into Max Preps, you can see stats for soccer players, baseball, and we enter our scores into Max Preps, and they have roughly 18 states. Maybe I might be wrong with that, but a number of states use Max Preps for their scores, and UTR struck a deal with Max Preps. So we don't have to, as coaches, go into UTR and enter those scores separately. They just get integrated, just like if you went and played a USTA match. Mm-hmm. So I think, I was telling Coach Traub this story, and it's a little bit far-fetched for tennis, but the company that I work for, we have a team of folks up in central PA, and I would typically fly up to Baltimore and drive from Baltimore to PA, because the direct flight from Charlotte to Harrisburg was around $900 normally. So I would take that flight often, and I noticed there was a dad and a son that was in the airport with me in Charlotte. We ended up on the rental car shuttle in Baltimore, and normally I just kind of keep to myself, but it was odd. It was a weekday, it was a school day, there was a school age kid, a high school age kid, and he had a basketball with him. And it just, the things started going through my head. And so I asked him, hey, what are you guys up to? What brings you to Baltimore? And the dad was telling me that his son was not getting enough playing time on the basketball team. And they were looking at a high school in Baltimore, and they were considering relocating. And I was like, wow, that's big. You're going to move your family to get your son a better opportunity to play basketball. And I started thinking from a tennis perspective, would that ever happen in tennis? And I don't think so. Kind of to your point, Lisa, is that high school has never really been needed, right? You can just play the tournament scene. It's completely optional. So I think with UTR, could that change? If I'm a parent and I'm looking for a lot of matches, would I be, parents, some tennis, I'll say one thing about our tennis parents. They're awesome. Our tennis parents are awesome. They support their kids so well. And just considering the amount of money that it takes to get a player to a college level, it's not far-fetched that maybe you would be able to find a high school or a conference that's super competitive that you would move to, that's maybe running a year-round program. Again, I think it's very far-fetched now, but let's think about in the future. Right now, there's a college UTR fit. You can go in and say, okay, my kid's a 9.6. Let's say as a freshman, I want to see if he can play line 5. You can put that into UTR and you can see all the schools that fall into that range. What if you had that for high school? You could find a high school. Right now, it's a very challenging to determine, where all the good schools are, where we could, go play a higher level. But I think having the scores in UTR, is a huge advantage, and we're hoping that the tournaments, the postseason tournaments, will adopt UTR for seedings. Right now, it's more of a shell game and a political game to come up with the seedings. But if it was more objective and using UTR, I think that would be a huge benefit. And I think the other piece is, my son hasn't really played a lot of doubles tournaments. He normally just enters the singles draw, but during the high school season, we get a lot of doubles reps, and all those scores are going into UTR. So at a minimum, one of the major benefits is, if you play, a few years of high school tennis, you'll have a solid doubles rating that you may not have. And I know, college coaches don't put a ton of value on that, but, there are teams that have double specialists. So if you have if you're highly skilled in doubles and your UTR is reflective of that, and you're going to get a lot of doubles reps in playing high school matches.
Sure. I mean, all great points, and it'll be interesting. I really hope we don't get to a place where people are looking to move for their kids' high school tennis team. I already have some very strong feelings about families who pick up and move for their child's junior tennis period. But anyway, that said, Coach Traub, I want to let you chime in. We're coming to the end of our time here, but can you just talk a little bit about the value that you saw that your sons gained from playing high school tennis?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to take my oldest son. It's right now he's a junior at Clemson. When he reached about 16 years old, and I remember after we came back from Little Rock at Southerns, and I think it was kind of a shock, because when you go to Southerns for the first time and you're not part of an academy, you come to Southerns and there's all these vans, right? And all these vans have all the Smith Stearns and Hilton have this. You're like, oh my gosh. And the coaches are jumping out of the vans with the kids. And I'm like, me and my son with a couple balls, right? I'm like, geez, kind of outmatched here, right? Well, he kind of burned out a little bit. And I think he saw the the level he would have to go to if he wanted to keep playing. So he kind of didn't really want to play competitive tennis anymore around 16. And I said, hey, I said, that's totally fine, you know. I said, but why don't you stay on the high school team? I said, you're probably the number 1 or 2 player on the team. You know, you love the guys on that team. He goes, yeah. He goes, I want to do that. So I think what he really got out of it, he loved his last couple of years, junior and senior year, that he could have played college tennis. He ultimately decided to go to Clemson and decided not to play. But we had fortunately had a very competitive team, and the year that he was a senior or a junior, I'm sorry, we were supposed to be in a rebuilding season. We had lost, you know, probably like 6 starters, and we had a couple of, you know, D1 level players leaving the team, and no one thought we would be that good. And he helped be one of the leaders on that team, and we reached the state finals, upset a few teams in the playoffs, and it was such an exciting, you know, playoff run. And I think he really enjoyed that, you know. So I think both my sons really they enjoyed the team camaraderie actually more fondly than some of the tournament victories they had and some of those wins. So I really think that, and this has been true of other of our top players that went on to play Division I tennis, is they actually enjoyed, you know, those moments with their teammates, you know, winning a big match. And I think those memories, like Kyle said, those are memories you're going to always have. I mean, not everyone's going to win Southerns, but you know, being the star of your team and being hoisted on your teammates' back, you know, it's just a great experience. So.
Agreed. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast and for coaching, taking the time out of your life to give back to these kids at the high school level. I think it's just amazing, and they're very lucky to have you. And I hope that kids across the country get the benefit of having such dedicated, knowledgeable coaches who understand the value of playing for your high school team. Even if your goals and dreams involve going off to play high-level college tennis, there is a lot of value to be had by playing at the high school level, regardless of what happens with UTR, regardless of what happens with ratings and rankings and all those things. Having that experience of being part of a team, winning, and, you know, doing something for the team as opposed to just yourself, which our kids are, you know, that's what they do as tennis players. It's, as you've said, it's them by themselves out there competing. So it's nice to have a little bit bigger something to play for. And I'm a big fan of high school tennis. I hope it continues to grow. And again, thank you both for taking the time to come share your experience with us.
Our pleasure, Lisa. Thank you very much. Go Mavericks.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks so much. And to my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.